Are you sure you want to do that?
No.
Babies are a blessing.
I can't be pregnant. I can't be pregnant. This can't be happening. I can't handle this.
You replaced my pills, didn't you? Zoe didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. The words landed softly, but they sliced through the boardroom cleaner than any shout ever could. 42nd floor, Midtown Manhattan stretching wide beyond the glass walls. Quarterly earnings frozen on the presentation screen. 22 executives seated around polished walnut. Austin stood at the head of the table. Perfect navy suit, perfect posture, perfect composure. Until now. We'll be restructuring the acquisition timeline, he had been saying. Now he wasn't saying anything at all. Just looking at her. Zoe stood near the doorway, coat still on, fingers curled tightly around a small white bottle. Her breathing wasn't dramatic. It was uneven, controlled, but uneven. 10 minutes earlier, she had sent him a message. I'm ovulating. I need you. She had stared at the screen, waiting for those 3 grey dots. Nothing. She checked again. Still nothing. That's when she walked into the bathroom, opened the drawer, picked up the bottle, shook it. Too full. Her stomach dropped quietly. Now she held it up slightly, not accusing yet. Just asking. Austin, she said again, softer this time. You replaced my pills, didn't you? A chair shifted faintly. Someone stopped typing. No one dared look directly at either of them. Austin inhaled slowly. Steady. Executive calm. Zoe, he said, voice low, measured. This isn't the right time. Her lips parted slightly, a small exhale. Well, it wasn't the right time for you to decide for me either. No shouting, no tears, just truth. And that was worse. Austin didn't react immediately. That was his gift. Silence under pressure, negotiations, acquisitions, media storms. He could stand in heat without sweating. But this was different. His eyes dropped briefly to the bottle in her hand, then back to her face. Zoe, he said quietly, the faintest warning under his breath. Let's step outside. She swallowed. Her throat moved slowly. No, she replied. Not sharp, not loud, just firm. We're not stepping outside. A faint hum from the ceiling vents filled the space. Someone near the far end of the table shifted in their chair. Another executive closed a laptop halfway, gently, as if afraid even the click might be too much. Zoe's fingers tightened around the bottle. Her knuckles were pale. You told me, she said carefully, eyes locked on him, that you respected me. A small pause. That you loved me. Her voice wavered slightly on that last word. Just slightly. Austin's jaw flexed. We'll talk about this at home, he said, still composed. Still CEO. Zoe let out a breath that trembled at the edges. At home? She repeated softly. Her eyes glistened now. Not overflowing, just glassy. You manipulated my body, Austin. The sentence was steady, clear. It didn't echo. It settled. No one moved. Even the city outside the windows felt distant. Austin's shoulders stiffened. That's not what happened, he said. But his voice wasn't as controlled now. Not fully. She blinked slowly. Then explain it to me. A pause. A long one. You swapped them, didn't you? Her breath hitched quietly. You decided I should be pregnant. And this time, the silence pressed harder than any accusation. Her chest rose slowly. Fell. And just like that, she wasn't in the boardroom anymore. She was sitting on the edge of their bed 3 weeks earlier. Lights. Dim. Rain tapping softly against the penthouse windows. Her phone resting in her palm. The apartment felt too quiet that night. Too wide. Too empty. Austin had been working late again. She had tracked her cycle for years. Carefully. Methodically. But that night, when she checked the app, Her pulse changed. Ovulating. Her thumb hovered over the screen. She almost locked the phone. Almost. Instead, she typed, "I'm ovulating. I need you." She stared at it. Heartbeat in her ears. She whispered to herself, "What am I doing?" Send. The message whooshed away. 3 dots appeared almost instantly. Her breath caught, disappeared, came back. Then, "On my way." She blinked. He didn't ask questions, didn't hesitate. Just, "On my way." 30 minutes later, the door opened. Rain clung to his coat, his hair slightly damp. He didn't speak at first. He just looked at her, like she was something fragile, something he'd almost lost. "You okay?" he asked softly. She nodded, then shook her head. "Just don't talk," she whispered. He crossed the room in 2 steps, pulled her into him, her face pressed against his chest, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. "I missed you," he murmured. And when she looked up at him, when his hand cupped her jaw, when his lips brushed hers gently, slowly, like he was asking permission, she breathed against his mouth, "I love you." And this time, he didn't hesitate. White tile, cold bathroom floor, morning light barely breaking through the blinds. Zoe sat on the edge of the tub, staring at the small plastic stick in her hand. Her fingers were trembling, just slightly. "It's probably nothing," she whispered. She looked again. 2 lines, clear, unmistakable. Her breathing stopped. Actually stopped. Like her body forgot how. No, that's not," she murmured, blinking hard. "I've been careful. I've been—" Her eyes darted toward the bedroom, toward the nightstand, toward the drawer, the bottle. Her stomach tightened. Too full, too heavy, too wrong. A slow realization crept up her spine. Not loud, not dramatic, just cold. She stood up carefully, like sudden movement might shatter something invisible, walked into the bedroom, opened the drawer, picked up the bottle again, shook it. The pills inside didn't sound the same. Her chest began to rise faster now. She opened it, poured one into her palm, looked at it closely. The imprint was different, small, but different. Her throat closed. And when Austin walked in moments later, smiling, confused by the look on her face, she held up the test. Then, the pill. Her voice barely made it out. "You chose for me. Back in the boardroom." Her eyes lock onto his. "You chose for me," she repeats quietly. "And now, everyone understands what this is about. If you've ever trusted someone with your whole heart, if you've ever believed love meant safety, tell me in the comments, was she wrong to confront him publicly? Or did he deserve it? And if you believe relationships should be built on honesty, not control, go ahead and like this video. It helps more than you think. Subscribe. Because this story, we're only getting started. Ohio. Not the glossy Manhattan skyline outside the boardroom windows. Not glass towers. Not private elevators. Just a narrow 2-story house in Dayton with peeling white paint and a porch that creaked whenever someone shifted their weight. Zoe used to sit on those steps when she was little. 7 children. 1 bathroom. 1 mother who always looked tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes. The kind that sits behind the eyes. The kind that doesn't leave. The house was loud. Always loud. A baby crying in one room. A pot clanging in the kitchen. Her older brothers arguing about whose turn it was to wash dishes. Her sisters whispering about school dances they weren't allowed to attend. Zoe learned early how to be quiet. If she was quiet, she wouldn't add to the noise. If she was quiet, maybe her mother wouldn't look at her with that expression. That distant one. Her mother was only 34 but looked older, much older. Her body had carried 7 pregnancies, 7 recoveries, 7 sleepless stretches of nights that blurred into mornings. There were moments, small ones, when her mother would just stand at the sink staring at nothing. Water running, plate unmoving in her hands. Zoe would watch from the doorway. "Mom?" she'd say softly. Her mother would blink. "Oh, sorry, baby. I'm here." But she hadn't been. Not really. Zoe didn't know the words for it back then. Postpartum depression, emotional exhaustion, chronic depletion. She only knew her mother sometimes felt far away. Her father worked long shifts at a manufacturing plant outside town, steel-toed boots by the door, grease under his nails. He didn't yell. He didn't hit. He just wasn't there. Even when he was sitting at the dinner table, fork moving, eyes fixed somewhere beyond the wall. "How was school?" he'd ask without looking up. "Good," Zoe would answer. That was usually the end of it. There were no long conversations, no deep check-ins, just survival. Bills stacked on the counter, coupons clipped carefully, her mother folding laundry with swollen fingers. And always another baby. Zoe remembered the day her youngest sister came home from the hospital. Her mother stepped through the door slowly, pale, fragile. Everyone gathered around. Her father kissed her forehead quickly before heading back outside to take a phone call. Zoe watched her mother lower herself onto the couch, watched the way she winced, watched the way she stared down at the newborn in her arms like she was trying to feel something, anything. Instead, there was just a long silence. Zoe was 8, but she understood something that day. Love wasn't the only thing that came with babies. There was something else, something heavy, and no one talked about it. That was the rule in that house. You didn't talk about what hurt, you just kept going. Zoe learned to disappear inside herself. To study, to earn good grades, to stay out of the way. She told herself that when she grew up, she would not look like that. She would not stand at a sink staring through walls. She would not feel swallowed whole. She didn't know how she would prevent it, only that she would. And that quiet determination began there, on a porch in Ohio, listening to a baby cry through thin walls. It was late, much later than Zoe should have been awake. She was 11. The house had finally gone quiet. No crying, no arguments, just the hum of the refrigerator and the soft ticking of the kitchen clock. Zoe had come downstairs for water. That's when she heard it. Not crying. Not exactly. More like uneven breathing. She paused halfway down the steps. Her mother was sitting at the kitchen table, alone. No lights on except the one above the stove. A single mug in front of her. Cold tea, untouched. Her shoulders were slumped forward, hair falling loosely around her face. Zoe stayed still. Something told her not to interrupt. But then, her mother spoke, not to anyone, just into the room. "If I could do it again." The sentence lingered, unfinished. Her voice cracked slightly at the end. Zoe's chest tightened. Her mother rubbed her eyes with the heel of her palm, shook her head, as if trying to erase the thought. Zoe stepped down the last stair slowly. "Mom?" Her mother, startled, turned quickly. "Oh, Zoe, I didn't know you were awake." Her voice changed instantly, lighter, careful. "Did you need something, baby?" Zoe shook her head. "No, I heard you." A pause, long, heavy. Her mother looked at her, really looked at her, eyes glossy but steady. "Go back to bed," she said gently. Then softer, almost to herself again. "Some things are just hard." Zoe didn't move. "What would you do again?" she asked quietly. Her mother inhaled, held it, exhaled slowly. "I'd rest more," she said finally. "I'd think more." Before what? The sentence trailed off again, unfinished. Her mother stood up abruptly, picked up the mug, washed it, water running. Conversation closed. Zoe stood there for a long time, 11 years old, trying to understand something that felt too big, too complicated. That night, lying in her twin bed, she stared at the ceiling. "If I could do it again," the words echoed, over and over. She didn't fully understand motherhood, but she understood regret, and the idea that someone could love their children and still wish they had chosen differently. That scared her, more than anything. Because if love wasn't enough to make it feel right, then what was? And somewhere deep inside her young chest, fear planted itself quietly. Zoe was 14 when the fear turned into something sharper, something intentional. It was summer. Heavy Ohio heat pressing against the house like a weight. The air conditioner had broken again. Windows were open, but the breeze barely moved the curtains. Her mother had just brought home another newborn. The 7th. Zoe remembered standing in the hallway, watching from a distance as relatives crowded the living room. "Oh, she's beautiful. Another blessing. You're so strong." Strong. That word again. Zoe's mother smiled politely, nodded, thanked them. But when everyone finally left, when the casserole dishes were stacked in the sink and the congratulations faded into quiet, her mother didn't look strong. She looked hollow. Zoe saw it clearly that night. Her mother sat on the edge of the bed, nursing the baby. Her shoulders slumped, back curved forward, eyes unfocused. The baby fussed. Her mother tried adjusting her position, tried humming softly, but her voice cracked halfway through the melody. "Mom?" Zoe asked from the doorway. Her mother looked up slowly. There was love there, yes, but there was also something else, something tired. "I'm okay," her mother said quickly, too quickly. Zoe stepped inside. "You don't look okay." A pause, a long one. Her mother stared down at the baby again. "Well," she exhaled softly. "Sometimes you can love something and still feel like you disappeared." The words landed heavily. Zoe felt them, even if she didn't fully understand. "Disappeared?" she repeated quietly. Her mother nodded faintly. "Like, you don't remember who you were before. Like your body isn't yours, your time isn't yours, your thoughts aren't even yours anymore. You just keep giving." Silence filled the room. The baby's small noises, the hum of the box fan in the window, Zoe's heart beating a little faster. "Is it worth it?" she asked before she could stop herself. Her mother blinked, surprised. Then she smiled, small, strained. "They're my children," she whispered. "Of course they're worth it." But her eyes hesitated. That hesitation was enough. That night, Zoe stood in front of the bathroom mirror, 14 years old, sweat clinging to her hairline. Skin flushed from the heat. She stared at her reflection, at her own young body, her own face. "I will never lose myself like this," she whispered. Her voice was barely audible, but it was steady. "I won't disappear." She didn't say it with anger. She said it with certainty. She would go to college. She would build something. She would choose carefully. And if motherhood ever came, it would be because she wanted it, not because it swallowed her, not because she drifted into it. That vow didn't feel dramatic. It felt practical, necessary, and she carried it with her. Quietly, like armor. Years later, that same vow followed her into a glass-walled Manhattan condo overlooking the city. The contrast was almost unreal, from peeling porch paint in Ohio to polished marble countertops, from shared bedrooms to floor-to-ceiling windows, from counting grocery coupons to a husband who discussed acquisitions over dinner. Austin, CEO, confident, ambitious, warm in private. He didn't know about the vow in the bathroom mirror. Not fully. He knew she was cautious. He knew she wasn't ready. But he didn't know the depth of it, didn't know that fear had roots. Every night, after brushing her teeth, Zoe would open the drawer of her nightstand, slide her hand inside, feel for the small white bottle. It was routine, precise. She took the pill with a sip of water, set the bottle back in its place, closed the drawer softly. Sometimes she'd sit on the edge of the bed afterward, just for a second, letting the memory flicker. Her mother at the sink, her mother at the kitchen table. If I could do it again. Zoe would inhale slowly, then steady herself. This was different. Her life was different. She had options. Control. Choice. That word mattered most. Choice. Austin would sometimes wrap his arms around her from behind while she stood at the window. "You ever think about a little one running around in here?" he'd ask gently. She would smile, lean back into him. Well, maybe someday. Someday felt safe. Someday had distance. Someday wasn't now. But even as she said it, a faint tightness would form in her chest. Because part of her knew someday had to either arrive or be avoided. And she had chosen avoidance, carefully, methodically, until the night she opened the drawer. And the bottle felt wrong. Until the boardroom, until the accusation, until everything she thought she controlled shifted. Before the boardroom silence, before Zoe stood at the door holding that bottle, Austin was known for something else entirely. Control, precision, results. In New York, his name carried weight. Financial channels invited him on quarterly segments. Tech podcasts quoted him. Magazines photographed him standing in tailored suits against skyline backdrops. Visionary, strategic, disciplined. He handled interviews the way some people handle rehearsed speeches. Calm, measured, unshaken. "Where do you see the company in 5 years?" a host once asked him. Austin smiled slightly. "Well, growth is never accidental," he replied. "It's intentional." Intentional. He liked that word. He built his software company from a rented co-working space in Brooklyn into a multi-floor headquarters in Midtown. He knew how to read markets. He knew how to anticipate downturns. He knew how to pivot. And inside that 42nd floor boardroom, when investors questioned projections, he didn't flinch. "Trust the long view," he would say. His confidence wasn't loud. It was steady. Even his posture reflected it. Shoulders back, chin level. Voice never rushed. Employees admired him. Investors respected him. Competitors watched him carefully. But there was something people didn't see. After interviews ended, after cameras shut off, after the applause at industry conferences faded, Austin would step into a quiet elevator alone. The doors would close, and his face would change. Not collapse, not break, just soften. His phone would buzz constantly. Emails, alerts, updates. But sometimes he wouldn't look at it. He'd stare at his reflection in the mirrored wall. Blink, slowly. Exhale. Success filled his schedule, but it didn't fill everything. On more than one late night, he'd linger in his office after everyone left. City lights glowing below, his hands resting on the desk. Quiet. And in that quiet, one thought returned again and again. Family. Not investors. Not growth charts. Family. He didn't talk about it publicly. Didn't attach it to branding or interviews. But it was there, steady, private, and growing stronger each year. He and Zoe said, maybe someday, the version of Austin that the world knew was polished. The version Zoe knew was different. He was softer at home, looser. He'd loosen his tie the second he stepped through the condo door. Drop his briefcase gently by the entryway. "Zoe?" he'd call out, voice warmer already. If she was in the kitchen, he'd walk straight to her, wrap his arms around her waist from behind, rest his chin lightly on her shoulder. "How was your day?" he'd ask, and he actually waited for the answer. Sometimes she'd shrug. "Fine." He'd tilt his head slightly. "Just fine." That tiny question always lingered. He paid attention. If she was quiet at dinner, he noticed. If she laughed a little less than usual, he noticed. On Sundays, he made coffee for her before she woke up. Strong, just the way she liked it. He'd sit across from her at the breakfast bar, watching her tuck her legs under herself on the stool. "You ever think about how quiet this place is?" he asked once. She smiled faintly. "It's peaceful." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, peaceful." But there was hesitation there. He didn't rush into the subject. He never demanded, but sometimes he'd rest his palm on the empty space beside them on the couch. Tap it lightly. "Feels like someone's missing," he murmured one evening. Zoe's breath had caught just slightly. She covered it with a soft laugh. You're dramatic. Am the first? He teased gently, but he didn't push. He kissed her forehead instead. Yet at night, when they lay facing each other in the dark, Austin sometimes traced slow circles on her hip and whispered things he didn't say during daylight. I think you'd be an incredible mother. She'd go still for half a second, then smile into the pillow. Well, I'm not ready. He'd nod. Okay. But his thumb would pause before continuing its small movement. He never argued, never accused. He believed love meant patience. He believed someday would arrive on its own. What he didn't know, what he couldn't see fully, was that not ready wasn't about timing. It was about fear. And fear doesn't soften just because someone is gentle. It hides. And the more he spoke about future children with hopeful calm, the more carefully Zoe guarded the drawer in her nightstand. The drawer slid open with a soft wooden whisper every night at 10:17 p.m. Not 10:10, not 10:30, 10:17. Zoe liked precision. It made things feel controlled, predictable. Austin would usually be in the living room finishing emails on his tablet, glasses low on his nose, scrolling quietly. She would stand in the bathroom first, brush her teeth. Wash her face, pat dry. Routine mattered. Then, she would walk into the bedroom, open the right side nightstand drawer, reach past the silk sleep mask, past the folded hand cream, until her fingers wrapped around the small white bottle. Every time she picked it up, there was a flicker. Not panic, not exactly, more like awareness. This is why I'm safe. She would tap one pill into her palm, hold it there for a second, just looking at it. Tiny, ordinary, powerful. Sometimes, she'd hear her mother's unfinished sentence echo faintly in her memory. If I could do it again. She would close her fingers around the pill quickly, swallow it with water, place the bottle back in the exact same position. Cap facing outward, label aligned, drawer closed softly. That was the ritual. But what she didn't admit, even to herself, was that lately, after she closed that drawer, she didn't feel relief anymore. She felt something heavier, because Austin had been so patient, so loving, so open about wanting more. And every time he kissed her goodnight, every time he whispered, "We'll figure it out when you're ready," she felt a pinch of guilt settle beneath her ribs. She wasn't figuring it out. She was preventing it. There's a difference. One night, after swallowing the pill, she sat on the edge of the bed longer than usual. Austin looked up from the couch. "You okay?" he called gently. She nodded. "Yeah. Just tired." He studied her for half a second too long, then nodded back. "Come sit with me." She did. She always did. But something small had started shifting, and she felt it, even if she didn't name it. It began subtly, not dramatic, not loud, just small changes. Zoe laughed a fraction later than she used to. Her responses became shorter. She'd stare out the condo windows longer. One evening, Austin found her standing there again, city lights flickering below, her reflection faint against the glass. He approached quietly, wrapped his arms around her. She didn't lean back immediately. It was slight, but he felt it. "Zoe?" he murmured softly against her hair. She inhaled. "Oh, sorry, I didn't hear you. You've been far away lately." Her shoulders tensed under his hands. "I'm right here." He nodded, but he didn't move away. "I know," he said carefully. "I just feel like you're carrying something." A pause. She almost told him. Almost said, "I'm afraid I'll disappear." Almost said, "I don't trust what motherhood does to women." Instead, she shook her head. "Work's been busy." He studied her profile. "Busier than mine." He tried lightly. A faint smile tugged at her lips. but it didn't reach her eyes. That's when he started noticing. The way she stiffened when baby commercials came on, the way her jaw tightened when friends announced pregnancies, the way she redirected conversations. One Saturday brunch, their friends Mark and Elena shared ultrasound photos. Austin smiled warmly. "That's incredible," he said, genuinely happy for them. Zoe smiled too, but under the table, her fingers curled into her napkin. He felt her withdraw again that night, in bed, facing away from him. He placed his hand on her waist. She shifted slightly, not rejecting, just not fully there. "Talk to me," he whispered. She closed her eyes. "I don't know what you want me to say," he swallowed. "I don't want rehearsed answers. I want you." Silence, heavy, breathing in the dark. Finally she turned toward him. "I love you," she said quietly. He brushed his thumb along her cheek. "I love you too, but love doesn't automatically close distance." And the more he sensed it growing, the more he began thinking about solutions, about timing, about what needed to change. And here's the question I want you watching right now to answer honestly. If you sensed your partner slowly pulling away, would you confront it immediately? Or would you convince yourself it would fix itself? Tell me in the comments. And if you believe communication is the only thing that protects a marriage from silent cracks, go ahead and like this video. Because what happens next changes everything. It happened on a Sunday. Quiet. No board meetings. No investor calls. No alarms set before sunrise. Sunlight slipped through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Manhattan condo, stretching across the hardwood floors in long, warm bands. Zoe had fallen asleep reading. A novel rested open against her chest. Austin had woken earlier. He liked Sundays slow. He moved through the kitchen carefully, making coffee, the scent filling the space. He glanced toward the bedroom once, smiled faintly. Peaceful. That's what it felt like. He carried 2 mugs inside, set one on her nightstand gently. "Zoe," he said softly. "Hey." She stirred, brows knit slightly. What time is it?" "Almost 9. She stretched lazily. The book slid off her chest and onto the floor with a soft thud. Austin bent down to pick it up. That's when he saw it, near the edge of the nightstand, half hidden behind the lamp. A small white bottle. He didn't think much of it at first. He picked it up absent-mindedly, turned it over in his hand, read the label. His smile faded. He stared at it longer, then opened it. White tablets inside, almost full. Zoe sat up slowly, rubbing her eyes. She saw the bottle in his hand, and something inside her body went cold, instantly. Her heartbeat changed. "Austin," she said quietly. He looked up, eyes searching her face. "What's this?" he asked. Not angry, not yet, just confused. She swallowed. The air in the room shifted. "That's nothing," she tried. He tilted his head slightly. "Nothing?" His thumb traced the label again. Her name printed clearly. Prescription details. She watched his expression alter piece by piece. Confusion, then understanding, then hurt. "You've been taking birth control?" he asked slowly. She didn't answer right away, and that silence was answer enough. His shoulders straightened. "All this time?" She moved to the edge of the bed, feet touching the floor. "I was going to tell you." "When?" His voice wasn't raised. That almost made it worse. "After how many more, maybe some days?" Her throat tightened. "I didn't want to fight." He let out a short breath through his nose. "We weren't fighting." "No," she said softly. "You were hopeful." The word landed between them. Hopeful. Austin looked down at the bottle again, then back at her. "You told me you weren't ready," he said carefully. "I'm not." "That's different from this." The space between them felt wider now, even though they were only a few feet apart. "You've been deciding for both of us," he said. And something inside Zoe flinched at that phrase. Because she had. Zoe stood slowly. Her legs felt unsteady. "This isn't about control," she said, voice thinner now. It's about fear. Austin looked at her sharply. Fear of what? Me? No. She shook her head quickly. Of losing myself. He blinked. That's dramatic. It's not. Her voice trembled slightly. I watched my mother disappear, Austin. I watched her carry child after child until she didn't even recognize who she was anymore. His expression softened for half a second, but the hurt didn't leave. You think that's what I want for you? He asked quietly. I don't know what you want, she admitted. I want a family. The words were steady, clear. I want a child with you. Not because I'm trying to trap you, not because I need control. Because I love you. She pressed her lips together, tears forming but not falling. You didn't give me a choice, he said again, voice cracking slightly this time. I thought you were choosing me, she replied softly. I was. No, he shook his head. You were choosing against something. Silence, heavy, breathing uneven on both sides. I believed you, he continued. When you said you weren't ready, I believed it was timing. I thought maybe I was pushing too hard. He laughed once, dry, humorless. I even blamed myself. Zoe's eyes widened. You did? Yes. His voice grew rougher now. I thought I was making you uncomfortable. I thought I was rushing you. She stepped closer instinctively. Austin. But this? He lifted the bottle slightly. This isn't hesitation. This is a decision. A permanent one. And I wasn't part of it. Her chest tightened painfully. I was trying to protect us. From what? He demanded quietly. From becoming something we didn't mean to. We're married, he said. That doesn't mean we stop being individuals. His jaw tightened. So what was the plan? He asked. Take them forever? Pretend the conversation didn't exist? Her silence answered again. He looked away this time. Walked toward the window. City stretching below. I've been patient, he said, voice lower now. I've been careful not to push. I've respected your pace. And I've respected yours, she replied. He turned sharply. How? I stayed, she said, almost pleading now. I stayed when the fear felt bigger than the love. That landed, but it didn't fix anything. He looked at her like he was seeing her differently for the first time, not as the woman he loved, but as someone capable of hiding something fundamental. I don't know what to do with this, he admitted. That vulnerability hurt more than anger would have. Zoe took a step forward. I love you. He nodded once. I know. But his eyes weren't steady anymore. They were wounded. And that changed everything. Austin didn't speak right away. He stood near the window, back partially turned to her, one hand braced against the glass. The city below moved as it always did. Taxis, pedestrians, noise they couldn't hear from 40 floors up. But inside the bedroom, it was too quiet. You know what's ironic? He said finally, voice lower now. Zoe didn't answer. He turned slowly. I never talk about my childhood. She frowned slightly. You've mentioned it. Not really. He swallowed. My parents didn't want kids. The sentence was simple, but heavy. Zoe blinked. I thought you said, they had me because they thought they should, he interrupted gently. Because everyone around them was doing it. He laughed softly, without humor. There wasn't neglect, not the kind you can report. There was just absence. He searched for the right word. Distance. Zoe's chest tightened. They provided, he continued. Private school, tutors, summer camps. All the right boxes checked. But, she whispered, but I don't remember them being present. A pause. He looked down at his hands. I remember birthdays where my mother smiled for photos and then left the room. I remember my father missing recitals because of business trips. His jaw flexed. I remember deciding when I was 12 that if I ever had a child, they would never wonder if they mattered. Zoe's breathing slowed. He hadn't said this before. Not like this. I don't want a family because it's expected, he said carefully. I want it because I know what it feels like to grow up emotionally alone in a full house. The words settled between them. Heavy, raw. You think I don't see how you look at kids? He added quietly. You soften. You notice details. You'd be different from your mother, Zoe. You don't know that, she said quickly. I do. Her eyes filled now. Not dramatic, just full. I'm scared, she admitted, voice cracking. I'm scared I'll wake up one day and not recognize myself. Austin stepped closer slowly. Then we face that together. She shook her head. You can't promise that. I can promise I won't disappear on you. Silence again. Longer this time. I thought, he continued carefully, that someday you'd trust me enough to choose this with me. And I thought, she whispered, you'd understand why I couldn't. Their truths didn't cancel each other out. They just collided, and neither of them knew how to soften the impact. Austin looked down at the bottle still in his hand, then back at her. His expression had shifted. Not angry, not pleading, just tired. I need time, he said quietly. Zoe froze. Time, she repeated softly. Yes. For what? To figure out what this means. Her stomach dropped. For us? She asked. He hesitated. That hesitation hurt. For everything. She stepped toward him again. Austin, please. I'm not leaving, he clarified quickly. I'm not packing a bag. I'm not walking out of the marriage. His voice steadied slightly. But I can't pretend this didn't change something. Her hands trembled faintly at her sides. I didn't mean to hurt you. I know. And I wasn't trying to deceive you. He looked at her carefully. But you did. The honesty stung. He placed the bottle gently back on the nightstand. Not thrown. Not slammed. Set down. Deliberate. I need space to think, he continued. Not from you physically. Just internally. Her chest felt tight, like the room had shrunk. I'm still here, he added, softer now. But I need to process this. She nodded slowly. Because she didn't know what else to do. He walked past her toward the bedroom door. Paused. For a split second, she thought he might turn back, might say something reassuring, might close the gap. Instead, he opened the door, stopped again. Without looking at her, he said quietly, I thought we were making decisions together. Then he left the room. The click of the door closing wasn't loud, but it echoed. Zoe stood there alone, sunlight still stretching across the floor, coffee cooling on the nightstand, the white bottle sitting between them like evidence. She sank slowly onto the edge of the bed, hands resting in her lap, breathing uneven. For the first time since she was 14, her vow didn't feel strong. It felt isolating, and she didn't know which hurt more. The condo was quiet that night. Too quiet. Zoe had gone to bed early, or at least she had closed the bedroom door early. Austin didn't check. He told himself space was necessary. He told himself this was healthy. Instead of staying in the living room, he took the elevator down to the building's private office suite, a smaller workspace he kept separate from headquarters. Floor-to-ceiling windows, city lights scattered like distant signals. His jacket lay across the back of the leather chair, tie loosened, top button undone. He wasn't reviewing financial statements. He wasn't answering emails. He was just sitting there, hands clasped, staring at nothing in particular. Her words replayed in his head. I was trying to protect us. You didn't give me a choice. He exhaled slowly. Had she given him one? He turned slightly in his chair, looked at a framed photo on his desk. It was from their honeymoon in California, Zoe laughing, wind in her hair. He remembered that version of her clearly, light, unburdened. When had that weight entered her eyes? Or had it always been there and he simply hadn't understood it? He stood and walked toward the window. His reflection stared back at him faintly. You've been patient, he murmured to himself. He had waited. He had softened conversations. He had swallowed disappointment quietly. He had believed love meant trusting the timeline would align. But what if it never did? That thought settled heavily. What if someday was always just a polite delay? He pressed his palm against the glass. Cool, grounding. He imagined coming home to a child running across hardwood floors, imagined Zoe laughing in the kitchen with flour on her hands. Imagined the quiet condo filled with noise. Life. The image felt right. Not forced. Not selfish. Right. And then another thought intruded. What if her fear never loosened? What if she stayed guarded forever? The idea of that future felt emptier than the one he feared pushing toward. He sat back down slowly. Loneliness didn't come from being alone. It came from feeling separated from someone lying 10 feet away behind a closed door. He rubbed his forehead. This isn't how it's supposed to feel. He wasn't angry at her. He wasn't disgusted. He was scared. Scared that they were moving in different directions while pretending they weren't. And for the first time, the idea of doing nothing felt worse than the idea of doing something, even if that something crossed a line. Austin didn't decide immediately. That's important. It wasn't impulsive. It grew. Quietly. Over days. He researched nothing illegal. He didn't look up dangerous methods. He didn't rage. He thought. Carefully. One evening, while Zoe was in the shower, he stood in the bedroom doorway, looking at the nightstand drawer. Closed. Ordinary. He didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, he walked away. But the thought lingered. If she's afraid of disappearing, what if experiencing motherhood shows her she won't? He leaned back against the hallway wall. You're rationalizing, he muttered under his breath. Maybe he was. But love complicates logic. He remembered her 14-year-old vow. Though he didn't know the exact words, he sensed its presence in her. That rigid protection. He wondered what would happen if reality gently challenged it. Would she break? Or would she realize she was stronger than her fear? He moved back toward the bedroom, opened the drawer this time, carefully, picked up the bottle, held it. It felt lighter than he expected. He shook it softly, tablets shifting inside. He stared at it longer than necessary. I'm not trying to control her, he whispered. He believed that, or tried to. I'm trying to save us. That sounded better. Kinder. He closed the drawer again without doing anything. Walked into the bathroom, stared at himself in the mirror. Is this selfish? He asked his reflection. The reflection didn't answer, but his mind did. It's temporary. It's just nudging fate. If she truly doesn't want this, you'll handle it together. He exhaled slowly. He didn't see himself as a villain. He saw himself as someone standing at the edge of losing something meaningful, and choosing not to let it drift away quietly. The next day, during lunch between meetings, he stopped by a pharmacy in Midtown. He purchased a bottle of vitamins identical in size and shape. The cashier didn't look twice. Why would they? He carried the small bag back to the office, placed it inside his briefcase, and for the rest of the afternoon, while discussing expansion metrics and market share, he was aware of that small, silent object sitting beneath legal documents, waiting. It happened on a Thursday, not dramatic, not stormy, just ordinary. Zoe was meeting a friend for dinner in Soho. She kissed Austin lightly before leaving. Don't work too late, she said. I won't, he replied. The door closed softly behind her. Silence settled in. Austin stood still in the living room for a full 30 seconds, listening, as if the apartment itself might object. Then he moved, slowly, into the bedroom. The nightstand drawer was closed as always, neat, aligned. He pulled it open. Careful not to rush, he picked up her bottle, turned it over in his hand. His breathing was steady, not frantic, steady. He opened his briefcase, removed the vitamin bottle he'd purchased days earlier. Same size, same color, same sound when shaken. He poured Zoe's remaining pills into a small envelope he had prepared. Hands precise, measured. He didn't spill a single tablet. Then he filled the prescription bottle with the vitamins. One by one, the small clicking sound echoed in the quiet bedroom. He paused halfway through, looked toward the doorway. Nothing. Just the hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. He finished filling it, screwed the cap on, adjusted the label so it faced forward, placed it back in the drawer exactly where it had been. Cap facing outward, just like she preferred. He closed the drawer gently. No slam, no trace. Then he stood there, staring at the wood grain. Heart beating slightly faster now. He picked up the envelope with the real pills, walked to his desk, locked them inside a private drawer. The key turned with a soft metallic click, and just like that, the line had been crossed. No alarms sounded, no lightning struck. The city continued moving below, but something invisible had shifted. That night, Zoe followed her ritual. 10:17 p.m., bathroom light on, drawer open. Austin watched from the couch, pretending to scroll through emails. He could hear the faint slide of wood, the quiet clink of the bottle. He didn't look toward the bedroom. He didn't trust his face. She walked back into the living room minutes later, sat beside him, leaning slightly into his shoulder. "Long day?" she asked softly. "Yeah," he replied. His voice sounded normal, too normal. He became hyper-aware of everything. The rhythm of her breathing, the warmth of her thigh against his, the faint scent of her shampoo. Did she feel different? Of course not. Nothing had happened yet. But inside him, something trembled. When she stood to go to bed, she kissed his cheek. "I love you." He froze for half a second before answering. "I love you too." Later, lying in the dark, she turned toward him instinctively, her hand resting on his chest. He stared at the ceiling. Sleep didn't come easily. His thoughts weren't triumphant. They weren't proud. They were unsettled. What if she never forgives me? He whispered into the dark. She stirred slightly. Half asleep. "Nothing," he replied quickly. He closed his eyes. He told himself it was temporary. He told himself this would open a door she was too afraid to push. He told himself he wasn't stealing her choice, just accelerating a conversation. But beneath all the justifications, there was a thin crack, a quiet awareness. He had taken something that wasn't his to take. And even if he believed love made it understandable, it didn't make it clean. He turned onto his side, facing her, watched her breathing slow, peaceful, trusting. His hand hovered just above her waist, then lowered gently. He pulled her closer, as if proximity could quiet the doubt rising inside him. But it didn't. It just made it heavier. It was quiet in the condo that evening. Too quiet. Zoe sat on the edge of the bed, elbows resting on her knees, phone in her hand. The city outside was restless. Wind pressed lightly against the windows. Clouds gathering over Manhattan, low and heavy. She hadn't meant to check her cycle app. It was habit, routine, control. Her thumb tapped the screen absent-mindedly. Then she saw it. Ovulation window. Her stomach tightened. A strange warmth flickered through her, unfamiliar, unwanted, and yet not entirely unwelcome. She swallowed. Austin had been distant since the Sunday conversation. Not cold, just careful, measured, and that carefulness felt worse. The space between them had grown polite. Politeness can suffocate love quietly. She looked toward the empty side of the bed. Then at her phone again. Her fingers hovered. This is reckless. But beneath the thought was something softer. Loneliness. She missed him. Missed the way he used to look at her without hesitation. Missed feeling chosen. Her chest rose slowly. Then she typed, "I'm ovulating. I need you." She stared at the message, heart pounding harder now. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't guarded. It was vulnerable, raw. Her thumb hovered over send. She whispered to herself. Then she pressed it. The message disappeared into the blue bubble. Silence. 3 dots appeared almost instantly. Her breath caught, disappeared, came back. She stood up and began pacing. The storm outside intensified slightly, rain beginning to tap against the glass. The dots vanished. Her stomach dropped. No reply. She checked again. Still nothing. Her throat tightened. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe she shouldn't have. Her phone buzzed. She froze, looked down. On my way. Just that. No questions, no delay. Her knees felt weak for a second. He's coming. Not because of pressure, not because of guilt, because, she asked. She exhaled slowly, relief and fear mixing together in her chest. She moved toward the bathroom instinctively, opened the drawer, reached for the bottle, paused, shook it once. The sound was slightly different, but she dismissed it. Her mind wasn't looking for problems tonight. She closed the drawer, turned off the light, and waited. Rain coated the city streets by the time Austin left his office. He didn't hesitate after reading her message, didn't analyze it, didn't overthink. He grabbed his coat, took the elevator down. His pulse was already elevated, not from anxiety, from hope. She reached for me. That mattered. In the car, traffic lights blurred through the windshield. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. He replayed her words in his mind. I need you, not someday, not maybe, now. He didn't think about the drawer, didn't think about the swap. In that moment, he was only a husband responding to his wife. When the condo door opened, he stepped inside quietly. Zoe stood near the bedroom doorway, barefoot, hair loose, eyes uncertain. He removed his coat slowly, rain droplets sliding from the fabric. For a second, neither of them spoke. The storm outside filled the silence. You came, she said softly. Of course I did. His voice was steady, gentle. He crossed the room in 2 steps, stopped just in front of her, close enough to feel her warmth, not touching yet. You okay? He asked quietly. She nodded, then shook her head slightly. I don't know. He studied her face. There was vulnerability there, and something else, longing. He lifted his hand slowly, brushed his fingers against her cheek. She leaned into it. Just barely. That tiny movement broke the distance between them. He pulled her into him, not urgently, not rushed, just holding, her face pressed against his chest. She could hear his heartbeat, steady, alive. I missed you, she whispered. He closed his eyes briefly. I'm right here. She inhaled deeply, as if memorizing him, then tilted her face upward. Their eyes met. The hesitation from the past weeks lingered for half a breath, then dissolved. He kissed her, soft at first, testing. She responded immediately, hands gripping the fabric of his shirt, pulling him closer. The storm outside intensified. But inside, something else was breaking open. The kiss didn't rush. It deepened, slowly, carefully, like both of them were afraid that one wrong movement might shatter the fragile bridge forming between them. Zoe's fingers curled into the front of his shirt. He felt the tremble in her hands. Hey, he murmured softly against her lips. Talk to me. She shook her head faintly. If I talk, I'll think, she whispered. And I don't want to think tonight. He understood that too well. His hand slid to her waist. Warm, firm, reassuring. She exhaled against him, a quiet sound that wasn't dramatic, just real. Weeks of tension had built something tight between them. Now it loosened, not in a sudden collapse, but in layers. He guided her backward gently toward the bedroom. She didn't resist. Her hands moved to his shoulders. The door closed behind them softly. Rain tapped harder against the windows now. A low rumble of thunder in the distance. The room felt smaller, closer, more intimate. He kissed her again, slower this time, more deliberate. Her breath hitched faintly. Austin, she whispered, almost unsure. I'm here, he replied. Those 2 words seemed to anchor her. He brushed his thumb across her jaw, then along her collarbone. Not hurried, not claiming, just rediscovering. She closed her eyes. For the first time in weeks, she wasn't bracing. She wasn't calculating timelines, wasn't guarding herself. She was just present. He lowered his forehead to hers. You don't have to be afraid with me, he said quietly. She swallowed. A a small crack in her composure. "I don't know how not to be," she admitted. He kissed her again instead of answering. Sometimes words complicate things. Their hands moved carefully, learning each other again. Her fingers slid beneath his shirt. His breath deepened slightly. He pressed his palm against the small of her back, pulling her closer. The space between their bodies disappeared, and something inside both of them softened. It wasn't just desire, it was relief. Relief that they hadn't completely lost each other. Relief that distance hadn't hardened into permanence. When they finally sank onto the bed, it wasn't frantic. It was steady, connected. Her laughter slipped out quietly at one point, soft, surprised. "I forgot how this feels," she murmured. He smiled faintly against her skin. "Me too." Their movements weren't aggressive. They were intentional. Searching, rebuilding. And when she whispered, breath uneven, "I love you," he didn't hesitate. "I love you." The words felt solid, certain, and for that night, they believed them without question. Morning arrived gently, no storm, no thunder, just pale sunlight stretching across the bedroom floor. Zoe woke first. For a moment, she didn't move. She simply listened. Austin's breathing beside her, slow, deep, peaceful. Her body felt warm, loose, calm. She turned slightly toward him, studied his face in the quiet light. He looked younger when he slept, less guarded. She reached out and brushed her fingers lightly across his cheek. He stirred, eyes blinking open slowly. "Hey," he whispered, voice rough with sleep. "Hey." They smiled at each other, small, private, like they shared a secret. "How do you feel?" he asked. She thought about it. Actually thought. Well, she exhaled softly. Lighter. He nodded. "Me too." Neither of them mentioned the argument. Neither of them mentioned the draw. For that moment, it felt unnecessary. She rested her head against his chest. He wrapped his arm around her instinctively. Outside, the city moved as always. Inside, the air felt settled, stable, safe, or at least, it seemed that way. Zoe closed her eyes again, allowing herself to believe the tension had passed, that the space between them had healed. She didn't know, she couldn't know, that beneath the calm, a decision had already been made weeks earlier, and that morning peace was built on something fragile, something hidden, something that would not stay buried. If you've ever experienced a moment in your relationship that felt like healing, only to later realize there was more beneath the surface, tell me honestly, have you ever mistaken peace for resolution? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you believe love sometimes feels strongest right before the truth comes out, like this video, because what's coming next changes everything. It started with nausea, subtle, easy to dismiss. Zoe stood in the kitchen one Tuesday morning, staring at her coffee. The smell turned her stomach. She frowned slightly. "That's weird," she murmured. She pushed the mug away, blamed stress, blamed sleep, blamed anything except the thought trying to surface. 2 days later, she stood in the pharmacy aisle, staring at pregnancy tests, her heart beating harder than necessary. This is ridiculous. She had been careful, meticulous, precise. She grabbed a box anyway, paid without making eye contact, walked home faster than usual. In the bathroom, she sat on the edge of the tub again, white tile cold beneath her bare feet. The same position she'd been in before, but this time the fear felt sharper. She followed the instructions mechanically, hands steady, mind not. Then she waited. Those 2 minutes stretched strangely. She stared at the sink faucet, counted her breaths. 1, 2, 3. "Don't be dramatic," she whispered to herself. The test beeped softly. She looked down. 2 lines, clear, unmistakable. Her vision blurred for a second. "No," she breathed. She blinked hard, looked again. Still there. 2. Her hand began to shake. That's not possible. She had taken the pill every night. 10:17. Religiously. The room felt smaller. Her chest tightened. She stood abruptly, nearly lost her balance, walked into the bedroom, opened the drawer, pulled out the bottle, shook it. The sound hit her differently now. Sharper. She poured one tablet into her palm, looked closer. The imprint, the shape. Her stomach dropped. That's not... She grabbed her phone, searched images. Her breath quickened. The pill in her hand did not match. It didn't match. Her pulse roared in her ears. No. A memory flickered. The slight difference in sound weeks earlier. The moment she dismissed it, her knees weakened. She gripped the edge of the dresser. "You didn't," she whispered. Her eyes filled, not with soft tears, with disbelief. Austin arrived home early that evening. He sensed something in her voice when she texted, "Can you come home?" Not dramatic, not urgent, but different. He walked into the condo carefully. "Zoe?" She stood near the window, back to him, hands at her sides. "You okay?" he asked. She turned slowly. Her eyes were red, but not from crying alone. From shock. She held out the pregnancy test silently. For a second, he didn't understand. Then he saw it. 2 lines. His breath caught. "Is that—" She nodded faintly. "Yes." Silence. Then something shifted across his face. Not calculation, not guilt. Joy. Pure. Unfiltered. His voice broke slightly. "We're going to have a baby." Zoe watched him carefully. He stepped closer, eyes bright. "Zoe, this is amazing." He let out a soft laugh of disbelief. "Oh my God." He reached for her instinctively, pulled her into an embrace. She didn't immediately hug him back. He didn't notice at first. "We did it," he whispered into her hair. She stiffened slightly. Her hands slowly rose between them, pressed against his chest, pushed him back. His smile faltered. "What?" he asked gently. She stared at him, searching. "You're happy," she said flatly. "Of course I am." Her breathing grew uneven. "You're not surprised?" He blinked. "I mean, surprised, yes, but not shocked," she cut in. He frowned slightly. "What are you saying?" She held up the pill in her trembling palm. "This," she said quietly. His stomach dropped. He recognized it instantly, but his face remained neutral. "What about it?" he asked carefully. Her voice shook now. "This isn't what I've been taking." Silence expanded between them, and for the first time, the joy in his eyes flickered. Austin didn't answer immediately. That hesitation said more than words could. Zoe saw it. The flicker, the shift in his eyes. Her chest tightened painfully. "You knew," she whispered. He inhaled slowly. "Zoe, you knew," she repeated, louder now. Not screaming, but shaking. He ran a hand through his hair. "It wasn't like that. Then, what was it like?" she demanded. Her voice cracked on the last word. She held the pill up between them. "This isn't birth control." He swallowed. Her stomach turned. "You switched them." It wasn't a question. It was a realization settling into place. He didn't deny it. And that was worse. Her face drained of color. "You actually did it." He stepped forward carefully. You thought, she cut in sharply, "that you knew better than me. That we were stuck," he said, struggling now. "That we were drifting apart. That maybe what?" She pressed. "Maybe if we stopped fighting the future, we could actually see it." Her laugh broke out suddenly. It wasn't amused. It was stunned. "So, you decided for me?" "I decided for us." "No." Her head shook quickly. "You decided over me." The difference landed heavy. He opened his mouth again, then stopped. She felt something cold settle in her spine. "I trusted you," she said quietly now. Too quietly. "I know. I took that pill every night believing I was choosing." Her breath grew shallow. "You took that choice." He stepped closer again. "I wasn't trying to hurt you. You didn't try not to. That silenced him. Tears finally spilled over her lashes. Not gentle tears. Sharp ones. You violated me, she said. The word hung between them. He flinched. Zoe. No. She backed away. Don't minimize it. Don't soften it. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. You altered my body without my consent. His voice lowered. I love you. That's not a defense. He ran his hands down his face. I thought you'd see that you're stronger than your fear. And if I wasn't? She shot back. If I couldn't handle this? He didn't have an answer. That silence widened the gap further. Zoe felt like the room was tilting. Like the floor beneath her feet wasn't stable anymore. She turned away from him, walked toward the bedroom. Her breathing was uneven now, almost gasping. Zoe, he called softly. She didn't respond. She entered the bedroom, shut the door halfway, not fully, just enough to create distance. She sat on the edge of the bed, hands trembling. Pregnant. The word echoed violently in her head. Pregnant. Her mother at the sink. Her mother whispering unfinished regrets. Her 14-year-old vow. I will never lose myself like this. She pressed her palm against her stomach. Nothing had changed physically yet, but everything felt different. Austin stood in the doorway, not crossing it. I never meant to make you feel trapped, he said quietly. She let out a shaky breath. I feel trapped, she admitted. That was the truth, not dramatic, just raw. He stepped inside slowly. I thought if you experienced it, you'd see it wasn't the end of you. And you didn't think maybe I deserved to choose that risk? He looked down. I was afraid you'd never choose it. She laughed softly through tears. So you removed my ability to say no. Her hands curled into the bedsheet. I need air, she whispered. He froze. What does that mean? It means I can't think clearly in the same space where this happened. You're not leaving, he said quickly. She looked up at him, and for the first time, there was distance in her eyes that scared him. I don't know, she said honestly. The uncertainty hit him harder than anger. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this, she continued. I don't know how to forgive it. He moved closer instinctively, but stopped when she flinched. That flinch shattered him. He stepped back immediately. I'm sorry, he whispered. She shook her head slowly. Sorry doesn't give me my choice back. Silence filled the room. Heavy, unsteady. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand. I need to think, she said. I said that once, he replied quietly. Yes. She nodded faintly. Now it's my turn. He didn't argue. He didn't plead. He just stood there, watching the woman he loved, question whether she could remain beside him. And in that moment, he understood something he hadn't before. Love doesn't justify control, and even good intentions can fracture trust beyond recognition. Zoe lay back slowly against the pillows, staring at the ceiling, pregnant, betrayed, terrified, and unsure whether the man she married was still safe. Zoe didn't leave that night, but she didn't sleep beside him either. She stayed in the bedroom. Austin remained on the couch. The space between them wasn't physical anymore. It was something deeper. Morning came slowly, grey light filtering into the living room where Austin had barely slept. He sat upright, elbows on his knees, staring at nothing. When Zoe stepped out of the bedroom, she paused. He looked older, not aged, just exposed. I need to tell you something, he said quietly. She didn't sit. She didn't move closer. She just waited. I wasn't just raised by emotionally distant parents, he began. Her brow tightened slightly. What does that mean? He swallowed. I was adopted. The word landed softly, but it changed the air. Zoe blinked. You never told me that. I know. Why? He hesitated. Because it made me feel unwanted. I was left at the hospital, he continued. No note, no explanation. Just paperwork. Her chest tightened involuntarily. My adoptive parents were stable, he said carefully. They provided. They didn't abuse me. They weren't cruel. But, she asked quietly, But I always knew I wasn't chosen first. His voice thinned there. Subtle, but real. When you grow up knowing someone gave you away before they even held you. He paused, inhaled slowly. It does something to your sense of worth. Zoe's anger didn't vanish, but it shifted. Slightly. I spent years convincing myself I didn't care. He went on. Built a company, built success, built control. His eyes lifted to hers. But fatherhood wasn't about ego. It wasn't about legacy. It was about rewriting that beginning. She said nothing. I wanted a child who never questioned if they were wanted, he continued. A child who never wondered why they weren't enough. And you thought that justified this? She asked quietly. No, he answered immediately. Not justified. He shook his head. But it explains why I panicked. She crossed her arms over her chest. You should have told me. I was ashamed. That honesty landed raw. I didn't want to look like a man trying to heal himself through a baby, he admitted. That sounds selfish. It is, she replied. He nodded faintly. Yes. Silence. Then, softer. But it's also human. That hung between them. Not absolving, just complicating. Days later, the boardroom confrontation happened. The moment from the hook. But this time, we stay. We don't cut away. Zoe stood there, holding the bottle. Executives silent. You manipulated my body, she had said. The air had tightened. Austin looked around the table slowly, at the investors, at the CFO, at the legal advisor seated near the end. He could have dismissed her, could have requested privacy, could have protected his image. Instead, he straightened, closed his laptop. Everyone, he said calmly, though his pulse was racing. I need 5 minutes. No one moved, but they stayed. He didn't ask them to leave. He didn't attempt to conceal it. He turned fully toward Zoe. Yes, he said. The word echoed. Yes, I replaced them. A ripple moved around the table. Someone inhaled sharply. Zoe's fingers tightened around the bottle. You're admitting it, she whispered. I am. His voice didn't shake, but his hands did slightly at his sides. I thought I was helping, he continued. I thought I was pushing us toward something she was too afraid to face. He gestured gently toward Zoe. But I took something that wasn't mine to take. Silence deepened. I grew up unwanted, he added, voice lower now. Adopted. Left before I was held. Murmurs flickered faintly around the room. I told myself that becoming a father would heal that wound, that it would prove I could choose someone the way I wasn't chosen. Zoe watched him carefully. I convinced myself love made it noble, he said. But love without consent isn't love. It's control. The room remained frozen. He turned fully to her. I was wrong. Not defensive. Not strategic. Wrong. I violated your trust, he said clearly. And I will accept whatever consequence comes from that. The vulnerability wasn't staged. It was uncomfortable. Real. For the first time since the explosion, Zoe saw no justification in his eyes, only accountability. The boardroom eventually cleared. Executives avoided eye contact as they gathered their things. No one made comments. No one offered opinions. The silence followed them out. When the doors finally closed, it was just the two of them. 42 floors above the city. Zoe stood still, the bottle still in her hand. Austin didn't move toward her. Didn't try to close the distance. He seemed to understand, now, that proximity had to be invited. I'm not asking you to forgive me today, he said quietly. She didn't respond. He reached slowly into his briefcase. Her body tensed. He noticed. It's not what you think, he added quickly. He pulled out a folded sheet of paper, set it gently on the conference table between them. She hesitated, then stepped closer, unfolded it. A therapist's letterhead. Appointment confirmations, couples counseling, individual trauma therapy, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, 5. Her brows drew together. You scheduled these? Yes. Her voice came out thin. For both of us? Yes. And you never told me? He exhaled slowly. I wanted to. When? When I thought you might say yes. She looked up sharply. So you were going to surprise me with therapy too? No. His head shook immediately. I wasn't going to force you. Then why schedule it? Because I knew we needed help. The honesty in that statement didn't feel manipulative. It felt exposed. I called after the Sunday argument, he continued. Before I ever swapped anything. She froze slightly. You were already looking for help? Yes. Then why? Her voice cracked. Why didn't you just wait? He closed his eyes briefly. Because I panicked. Silence. He swallowed. I saw you drifting further away. I thought if we kept delaying, someday would disappear entirely. She stared at the paper again. Dates circled. Times reserved. Unused. You didn't cancel them, she noticed. No. Why? His voice softened. Because I'm still hoping you'll come with me. No pressure. No demand. Just hope. She folded the paper slowly. Placed it back on the table. The anger inside her didn't vanish. But it shifted shape. This wasn't a man who acted without thought. It was a man who acted with flawed logic. There's a difference. Still wrong, but different. That night, Zoe stood alone in the condo. Austin had given her space again. No couch this time. He had gone to stay in a hotel nearby. Voluntarily, she walked toward the bedroom window, looked out over Manhattan, so different from Ohio, so far from the porch where she made her vow. Her hand drifted slowly to her stomach. Flat, unchanged, but not for long. Am I becoming her? She whispered. The memory rose easily. Her mother at the kitchen table. If I could do it again. But another memory surfaced too. Her mother holding a newborn. Despite the exhaustion, despite the regret, there had been love. Conflicted, messy, but real. Zoe exhaled slowly. What if I'm not her? She asked the quiet room. What if motherhood doesn't erase me? What if it reshapes me? The thought scared her, but it didn't terrify her the way it once had. She sat on the edge of the bed, closed her eyes. Austin's confession replayed in her mind. I was left at the hospital. I wanted to rewrite that beginning. Was he trying to heal himself? Yes. Was that selfish? Partly. Was it understandable? Also, yes. She pressed her palm more firmly against her abdomen. This is my choice now, she said softly. Not his, not fate's, not fear's, hers. And the question wasn't whether the pregnancy had happened. It had. The question was, would she let fear dictate the rest of her story? Or would she decide consciously, not out of panic, not out of guilt, but out of agency? She picked up her phone slowly, scrolled to Austin's name. Her thumb hovered. Then she typed, we need to talk, tomorrow. Not about blame, about what happens next. She stared at the message for a long second, then pressed send. Her heart pounded, not with dread, with something else. Possibility. Motherhood could repeat trauma, or it could break it, but only if she stepped into it by choice. And that part, still belonged to her. The exam room smelled faintly of antiseptic and paper sheets. Zoe lay back against the cushioned table, fingers laced with Austin's. He didn't grip tightly, just enough. Present. The therapist sessions had been difficult, honest, messy, but they were showing up, together. The ultrasound technician smiled softly. Ready? She asked. Zoe exhaled. I guess. The gel was cool against her abdomen. She flinched slightly. Austin brushed his thumb gently across her knuckles. The monitor flickered to life, grainy shapes forming. The technician's brows lifted faintly. She adjusted the wand. Paused. Zoe's heart rate quickened. Is everything okay? She asked quietly. The technician smiled again. Oh, yes. Very okay. A longer pause. Then, I'm seeing 3 heartbeats. Silence. Zoe blinked. I'm sorry. What? Triplets. Austin's fingers tightened instinctively around hers. Triplets. The word felt too large for the room. 3. 3 lives. 3 heartbeats flickering rapidly on the screen. Zoe's mouth opened slightly. No sound came out at first. Austin let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh. 3, he repeated softly. The technician nodded. 2 boys and a girl. Zoe's chest tightened. This wasn't what she'd pictured. Not 1 baby. 3. Her pulse raced. I don't know if I can... Austin leaned closer. Hey, he murmured. Breathe. She did. Slow. Inhale. Exhale. 3 heartbeats. Not fear. Not disappearance. Life. Unexpected. Overwhelming. But not impossible. Her eyes filled. Are they healthy? She whispered. So far, everything looks strong, the technician replied. Austin kissed Zoe's temple softly. We'll figure it out, he said quietly. That phrase felt different now. Not forced. Not controlling. We, not I. Zoe stared at the screen. 3 tiny pulses. 3 beginnings. Her fear returned for a moment. Sharp. Sudden. What if I lose myself 3 times over? But just as quickly, another thought rose. What if I multiply instead? She laughed softly through tears. Well, that's not subtle, she murmured. Austin smiled. No, he agreed gently. It's not. The drive home was quiet, not tense, just processing. Zoe stared out the window at Manhattan traffic. Triplets. Her mother had struggled with 7, but she had been alone emotionally. Zoe wasn't. That difference mattered. Austin broke the silence softly. You don't have to be brave all at once. She glanced at him. I'm not trying to be brave. What are you trying to be? She thought about that. Honest. He nodded. That's enough. Back in the condo, she stood again at the bedroom window, hand resting on her abdomen. 3. The fear wasn't gone. It just felt manageable, like a wave she could step into instead of being dragged under. Austin approached carefully, stopped beside her. Not touching yet. You can still say no, he said quietly. She looked at him. What? You can still choose, he clarified. I won't fight you. I won't push. Her throat tightened. He meant it. She could see it. She turned fully toward him. This isn't about what you want anymore, she said softly, or what I'm afraid of. Then what is it about? She placed his hand gently over her stomach. It's about who I decide to become. His eyes filled faintly. I'm not your mother, she continued. And you're not your birth parents. The words slipped out carefully. Birth parents. He swallowed. And these babies. She exhaled slowly. They're not therapy. They're people. He nodded firmly. Yes. Her voice steadied. I don't want to repeat trauma. And you won't, he replied. She held his gaze. Don't promise what you can't guarantee. He softened. Okay. A small silence passed between them. Then she whispered, I think I want to meet them. That wasn't dramatic. It wasn't shouted, but it was chosen. And Austin didn't celebrate loudly. He just leaned his forehead against hers. Okay, he breathed. And for the first time, hope didn't feel like pressure. It felt shared. Labor didn't begin dramatically. No movie-style rush. It started at 3:12 a.m. Zoe woke with a tightening sensation low in her abdomen. She lay still at first, counting, waiting. There it was again, stronger. She turned slightly. Austin, she whispered. He stirred immediately. Yeah? I think it's time. He was upright in seconds. No panic. Just focus. You sure? She nodded slowly. I'm sure. The drive to the hospital felt surreal. City streets mostly empty. Streetlights reflecting on the windshield. Austin kept one hand on the steering wheel and the other resting lightly on her knee. You okay? He asked softly. Ask me that again in an hour, she muttered, managing a faint smile. At the hospital, everything accelerated. nurses, monitors, voices layered over one another. Triplets meant caution, precision. Austin never left her side, not once. Hours passed. Contractions intensified. Zoe gripped his hand tightly. Sweat dampened her hairline. "This hurts," she breathed. "I know," he whispered. "No, you don't," she shot back weakly. He almost smiled. "You're right, I don't." Another contraction surged. She gasped. "Stay with me," he murmured, brushing hair from her forehead. "I'm here." The room shifted from anticipation to urgency. The first cry came sharp and sudden. 10:14 a.m. A girl. Zoe collapsed back against the pillows, tears spilling instantly. "That's her?" she asked breathlessly. "That's her," Austin whispered, voice breaking. He cut the cord with trembling fingers. The baby was placed gently against Zoe's chest. Warm, real, small. "Oh." Zoe exhaled shakily. 20 minutes later, 2 more cries filled the room. 2 boys, placed on either side of her. 3 tiny bodies. 3 fragile beginnings. Austin leaned down and pressed his forehead to Zoe's. "You did it," he whispered. She let out a broken laugh through tears. "We did." It wasn't about rewriting trauma in that moment. It wasn't about healing childhood wounds. It was just about breathing and holding on and realizing she hadn't disappeared. She was still there, just expanded. Weeks later, the condo looked different, not chaotic, but lived in. 3 bassinets arranged carefully near the couch. Soft blankets folded imperfectly. A stack of burp cloths on the coffee table. Zoe sat cross-legged on the rug. 1 baby in her arms, 2 resting nearby. Austin knelt beside her, adjusting a tiny sock. The room wasn't silent. It wasn't peaceful in the traditional sense. There were small sounds, soft fussing, tiny breaths, the hum of a bottle warmer in the kitchen. Zoe looked tired, truly tired, but her eyes, they weren't hollow. They were aware, present. Austin glanced at her. "You okay?" he asked gently. She thought about it. Actually thought. "Well," she exhaled softly. "I'm overwhelmed." He nodded. "Me too." She smiled faintly. "I'm scared sometimes." "Me too." That honesty didn't weaken the moment. It grounded it. She looked down at their daughter sleeping against her chest. "I didn't disappear," she whispered. Austin swallowed. "No." She glanced at him. "You don't get to make decisions for me again." "I won't." There was no hesitation in his voice this time. She studied him, then nodded. Because this time, she believed him. The room wasn't perfect. Their marriage wasn't spotless. There were cracks, conversations still ahead, therapy appointments still scheduled. But there was something solid beneath it now. Choice. Zoe shifted slightly, looked at all 3 babies. "Love isn't control," she said quietly. Austin met her gaze. "No, it's choosing each other," she continued. "Even when it's hard, even when we're wrong," he added. She nodded. "Especially then." The morning sun filtered gently through the windows. Not dramatic, just warm, real. Austin leaned in and kissed her forehead. She rested her head briefly against his shoulder. Not because she needed saving, because she wanted to. And that difference changed everything. If this story moved you, if you've ever had to rebuild trust after it broke, tell me, can love survive betrayal when accountability is real? Comment below. And if you believe growth is possible when both people choose it, not force it, hit like and subscribe. Because stories like this, they remind us, love is not control. Love is choice, and choice is powerful. They remind us, love is not control. Love is choice, and choice is powerful.
If you enjoy American Love Stories, please consider subscribing and comment what you need next. And love you all from Mr. Austin.